Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. For observers and participants of conferences like this, we all are aware that the first speaker after lunch has the hardest task here. And I try to be a bit provocative to wake you up and keep you alive and kicking here. The topic is about Germany's foreign policy in times of turmoil, challenges and chances. And in the beginning, I would like to come back to what Baroness Faulkner was referring to this morning. The book of Mr. Fukuyama in 1992, The End of History. And the thesis, the content of this book was, now as the decision of the right, quote unquote, system was finally been made, we are going to live forever, eternally in this wonderful world, all observing the same liberal values of peace, of stability, of human rights, of democracy, etc., etc. And the final decision of what is the right system to run a state has been made, and we can live there on. I think history and reality proved that this notion was wrong. And maybe we were a bit naive about the situation in the world, thinking that everybody would like to live the same way we lived. And maybe, and this is what I observe also when I talk to liberals in Germany, in Europe, and all over the place, and including in Moscow, maybe we often only hear what we want to hear. And I would like to elaborate a bit on the situation in Egypt to make clear what I want to say. In Egypt, we had an authoritarian regime, a dictator, Mubarak. We still could live with him quite well because he organized stability in the region. We all knew that he was not a democratic leader, but we could cope with it. Then the Arab Spring came, and I visited Cairo and Tunis and other places several times. And the message from the very outset was, it's wonderful that you Westerners come here to Egypt to help us, but please aware, and even liberal people in Egypt and Tunis said that to us, please be aware that at the end of the day, we do not want to live exactly like you live in the West. We tried not to hear closely to it, but this was the truth. Then in Egypt, there was a almost free and fair election, and the people of Egypt elected democratically the Muslim Brothers, who, before the election, were very outspoken about the situation that they do not want to live like we live. They were very clear and outspoken. Nobody would be fooled, and they were democratically elected. And then they were taken care of after 1 year with the big support of Western forces, because they didn't do the things that we want them to do. Still, again, in Egypt, now we have the same situation, and even worse than under Mubarak. We have a new president who is authoritarian, who is not democratic, and the same people sit in the prisons that sat before in the prisons for many, many decades. Where is the progress? I can't see any progress there in Egypt. And again, my message is that we have people in the world that say clearly, and we do not want to listen to it very often, that they do not share our values, they do not share our things. And what I learned here and what I learned yesterday I was at another conference here where there was a presentation of a book of our former foreign minister Genscher with our present party leader Lindner, that was published in Russian. And we were at the High School of Economics, and there was presentation there. And I heard almost the same thing that I heard several times here, that liberals say, well, we have hard times now, but be assured, at the end of the day, we will prevail. And at the end of the day, everybody in this wonderful world would like to live after liberal values. My dear friends, I doubt that notion. And I think we have not been able to cope with the situation that maybe even in the long run there are people that want to live differently and not to share all our values. Nobody wants to live in misery. Nobody wants to live poor. That's quite clear. But whether they all share our values of democracy, rule of law, gender equality, same rights for disregarding which sexual orientation you have, I have my doubt whether this will be, at the end of the day, the values that are shared by all of the world. What do we have to do in these times of turmoil? I think at first we should accept realities as they are in the world, and very often I find that even in Germany and elsewhere in Europe, and maybe also in the Western world altogether, we again only want to hear what we hear. In Egypt, for instance, there was a dramatic miscalculation of the sentiment of the people. I was in contact with our Naumann Foundation before the first elections in Egypt, and I was in contact with many experts on Egypt and asked them, what do you think the election result will be? And they said, well, there will be approximately 25 to 35% Muslims, brothers and others, and then we're going to have 25 to 35% of Democrats, conservatives and liberals in our sense, and the rest are individuals. The election results showed totally different things, and this was due to the fact that very often we only speak to the people that we can speak to, and we do not listen, and we do not find what other people think. So I think the first objective and the first goal is we have to accept a reality, and for Germany it means that we have to define and our place not only in Europe but also in the world. There's no doubt about it. And in Germany, please be aware that in Germany we all know our history. We have learned our history. We are all aware of the historic burden. But still, we are in 2014 a medium-sized country in the world which has some influence in Europe, and we have to cope with this role. For many, many years, there was, and we were criticized by our friends from abroad, that Germany was totally concentrating on economic development, making business around the world, but refrained from having too much political influence, and especially when it comes to military intervention. There's a big debate in Germany these days about the future role of Germany in the world. Our president made a big statement at the Munich Security Conference. The foreign minister made a statement. The minister of defense made a statement that in the future there will be a larger role of Germany in international politics. Interestingly, in Germany, many criticized these words, meaning and implying that they meant, the president and the foreign minister, etc., that they meant by more involvement, more military involvement. They didn't say that, and they didn't mean it, because there are other means of being involved in the national politics than just sending soldiers. Soldiers only can be the last resort, the final resort. We know that we have this resort, but there are many other more important and maybe probably more successful ways of influencing world politics. It's very clear that Germany has benefited a lot by the European Union. And that's why it's clear that the European Union is the future for German politics. The old narrative of Europe for old guys like myself and our generation was Europe means peace, freedom, and economic prosperity. If I would be 28 today, this is not such a bad notion to have peace, stability, and economic prosperity. But people say there must be something else to Europe. And there is a new European narrative. And this goes like follow. And I fully subscribe to this. This is looking at the world of the year 2040, 2050. It is my firm belief that we're going to have a multipolar world. We're not going to have one big country, the US, or two, US and China, who call the shots. No, we're going to have 5, 6, however, several poles and several influencing powers in the world. And it's my belief and our belief in Germany in the year 2040, 2050, not a single European country, neither Belgium, nor Spain, nor Portugal, nor Germany, nor France will be able at that time to sit at the table of decision makers, and they are in danger of just becoming an object of other people's decision. That's why we need Europe to stick together to be able to have a voice in the year 2040, 2050. And this, for my belief, is a very convincing notion, a very convincing narrative. And despite all the problems we have with the European Union, there are plenty of them. We all know about it. Still, this is what we strive for, and this is why Europe is so important. Well, what does it mean with regard to our relation to Russia? I've been in Parliament for 3 terms, and I've been a member of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly for almost 10 years. This is a group of parliamentarians from NATO countries who come together 2 or 3 times a year, and they discuss security and foreign policy issues. And especially in this arena, but elsewhere also, we Germans were criticized by our Western friends, especially from the United States and from Great Britain, with regard to our relationship to Russia. They said, oh, you Germans, you have a romantic love affair with Russia. You sing alike, you drink alike, you dance alike, you are as emotional as they are, and we are suspicious whether you are not really too close to them. And this was said by them, sometimes in a funny way and sometimes in a very serious way. And our answer always was, no, we don't have a romantic love affair with Russia. We know exactly what's happening there. We, the German parliamentarians, and I was there present, we went to Moscow several times to observe the Khodorkovsky trial. I was there for 3 hours to watch this very interesting, to put it mildly, and procedure there. And our former Minister of Justice, Liberal Minister of Justice, Leuthera Schnarrenberg, she was there 5 or 6 times observing the Khodorkovsky trial and making it public what's happening here. So we told our Western friends, we know exactly what's happening in Russia. We know exactly the tendency of Russian politics. But what we do not want, and this is what I think some people in the US and the UK were doing all the time, is just wiping out the term Soviet Union and replace it by the term Russia, and the rest remains the same. That means Cold War rhetorics, etc., etc. And we said no. From our point of view, Russia is a European country, and it is in our European interest to involve Russia in European affairs and to involve Russia in the affairs and try to get a close contact to Russia. Knowing that the tendency of Russian politics over the last couple of years were not to our liking at all. And we were very open about it and blunt about it, but still it's the right policy still to engage. Now then we had this German-Russian modernization partnership. And it's interesting to see that from the very outset, there are many, many misunderstandings there. Because it was clear that the Russian side, the understanding of Russia was modernization partnership means you Germans sell us your nuke technology and we give us our wonderful money, and then everything is fine. You like money, we like machinery, and this is modernization, period. The German understanding, and we made it very clear in all our deliberations with Russia, and I was in Moscow several times, and others also, no, our understanding of modernization partnership is different. Our understanding is, yes, of course, exchange and trade and technology, everything is fine, but our understanding of modernization implies also a modernization of society. Implies also the modernization of values, of systems, of democracy, of rule of law. This is our European understanding, and this is what we tried to convey. Then German politics even went beyond it and declared, and I didn't like the term at all, a strategic partnership between Germany and Russia. In my civil life, I've been a management consultant dealing with strategy development for large corporations. So I have much reservation when politicians in the political arena use the term strategy. I think they have sometimes no clue about strategy all about. I think the term strategic partnership was wrong, Because in my belief, you can only have a strategic partnership with a country that shares the vision of the world and that shares the goal and the final aims of the world, and not only the measures and means. And this was clear over the last 6, 7, 8 years, that the vision and the vision of the Russian political elite and the rulers and the vision of our political elite and the rulers were drifting apart. So I had a hard time understanding what a strategic partnership means. But I know for Russia it was very important. And I learned that when Minister Westerwelle, liberal foreign minister, came to Moscow for the first time in 2009 when he came to office, one of the most important topics from the Russian side was, Mr. Westerwelle, do you understand it also as being a strategic partnership between Russia and Germany? So this goes beyond modernization, but maybe this is just a term of semantics, but it applies something also. So where do we stand today? Our friends in Britain and America, at least the people that criticized us, could say, well, you Germans, you failed. You were naive, you failed with your Russian policy, being too close to Russia. And I said, this is one way of looking at it, but I still think it is important. And it is important for the future. And it's important from now on, for the next month and years, that we stay involved and stay engaged with Russia, even if we criticize Russian politics quite openly and quite frankly. And this is what I'm advocating strongly for the European Union and for Germany in particular. This brings me, and I asked twice today about the sanctions, because this is very important to get your view, the Russian view on sanctions. I have my doubts whether sanctions work. The lady made a very, sorry, I don't know your name. You made a very interesting argument. Tatiana Vorochekina, You made a very interesting point with regard whether sanctions may be a good thing, because sanctions showed the liberal audience in Russia that the West is willing to suffer and to do something about it besides just getting good words. On the other hand, I heard very loud and clear today the messages that, which I think makes a lot of sense also, that if this state of the Russian society sanctions against Russia bring together and not break apart the coalition between the rulers and the people, but bring them together. So we are hoping. We have to admit, though, that the sanctions that the European Union have put on are half-heartedly, really. I mean, when the French are still deliberating of selling a military ship, a navy ship to Russia, or two, they want to sell two, at least one, let us sell one at least. And when the Germans are still, these days are selling their gas pipeline infrastructure inside Germany to Rosneft and Russian companies, when the Italians are making big deals on energy and pipelines, etc., and then I have my doubts whether these sanctions are not really half-heartedly, and they are good to say that you have done something, but whether they are really meant seriously remains to be seen. The outlook is, I'm strongly advocating, and this would be my last sentences, I'm strongly advocating to be engaged with Russia, to try to convey our message to Russia, not go away from our liberal European values, and especially in Germany we stick to it, and we know how important they are for our society. And this is the way forward, and I'm an optimist. We liberals, we all have to be optimists. And hopefully we can achieve something. But again, I'm not so optimistic and say that at the end of the day, the whole world will share our liberal values and live like we live. That I have seen too much in this world to believe that this will be the case. I think this is a liberal dream. Let's dream on, but let's dream realistically. Thank you very much.